Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. This episode is brought to you by the BOLDERBoulder, America's all-time best 10K. The BOLDERBoulder, which normally takes place on Memorial Day each year, is keeping tradition alive by hosting their virtual Memorial Day 10K. Registration is free with the option to purchase limited edition gear, with a portion of the proceeds going to support Colorado's COVID-19 Relief Fund. Register for free and get more details at boulderboulder.com. Welcome back. I have Scott Fauble joining me today. Scott, thanks for joining in.
Thank you so much for having me, John. Ready to do this.
Of course. So first question, who is Scott?
Who is Scott? I don't know, man. I'm just a guy who likes running, I guess.
Awesome. And you do quite a lot of that. So as we were talking about before we started, the goal of this podcast is exploring the why, digging into the sort of inner workings of what keeps pro athletes and elite athletes successful and motivated. So I want to know why did you go for your first run?
I'm not sure. I started running, I guess, mostly to just as part of a youth track team. I think my mom kind of wanted me to get out of the house a little bit over the summer, and so she took me to a youth track practice, and I don't know, I was pretty good at it right off the bat. So it was probably something to do with wanting to be good at something again, like wanting to be really good at it.
So fast forward a couple of years, you're first American at Boston. What has allowed you to continue progressing over that time? You know, a whole lot of miles, but what has it been that's kept you engaged with the sport?
It's a good question. That answer has definitely changed. You know, I think if you would have asked me in high school, that answer would have been being good. It would have been winning. Mm-hmm. In college, probably a lot of that too, winning, but also the camaraderie of being on a team. And now there's still the competitive part of me and the ego part of me that wants to be really good and wants to win things. Mm-hmm. And there's a part of me that is like, well, this is my job. I have to be professional. I have to take care of the things I have to take care of. I have to represent my sponsors and my team and my coach well and my agent well. And, but I don't necessarily know. I would guess that there is something under that, and maybe we'll kind of be able to drill down at that during this interview, but I don't necessarily know if I can put a finger on what that answer is right off the bat right now.
Yeah,
there's probably some undercurrent that has been there the whole time though.
One thing that I've found interesting with how you approach it, you wrote an article or a blog post a while back, basically with the summary of, if you don't let failure define you, success shouldn't define you either. And I think it fits well into this conversation, and also the idea that it's just running at the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm. And we do it for fun, we do it for a job, we do it for whatever the motivation is. But I want to know, like, where did was that always your approach to it, or is it something that you learned along the way, that like the ups and downs are just part of it?
No, I think that's the ups and downs being part of it is something I've learned since becoming a professional. And I think at other parts of my career, if I ran my best race, I would be pretty successful. You know, in college, mm-hmm. I meant top 10 or top 15, even at nationals. And, in high school and youth track, like if I ran pretty well, I would win. Like that was just part of it. And then you get to be a professional, and there are a lot of races where you run really well and kind of get your doors blown off. For me, at least, like I'm not at a point in my career where I can say like, if I run really well, I will win. At least not right now. I can, if I pick my spots well and if I run well and if I'm really, really fit, I think I can compete in a lot of different situations. But I think kind of making peace with the fact that like, I'm not the best in the world. I'm not the best at this, and there are going to be struggles. And kind of figuring out a way to deal with that was sort of what motivated that. And then also, I don't know, I was probably looking at Instagram and saw somebody's bio that was like, had their PRs listed, and I was like, that's kind of dumb. And then I sort of let that thought spiral a little bit.
Yeah, I find the whole approach that you guys take at Northern Arizona Elite to be fascinating. So Ben was the first guest I had on this podcast, and in that conversation, we talked about how he had a group of athletes racing in New York, and ahead of New York, and feel free to correct me if any of this is wrong, because you were probably in that conversation. But he was saying that you guys weren't talking about times; you were talking about execution, and if you execute your best on race day, that's success. It's not 209, 211, 259, 359, whatever the time is. It's did you show up and perform optimally in the way that you can control?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly our philosophy, and we kind of believe that if we do compete well and if we do focus on competing, the times will come. Maybe not every single time. There are certain situations where the race is just not going to be fast. Like Boston 2018 comes to mind. But by and large, like if you look at people's best times over the course of their career, they're almost always a product of competing. They're very rarely time focused. Like if you look at, like let's say Ryan Hall, for example, like his best times were the times when he just let himself go and he just focused on racing. The 204 at Boston, he was just like, I'm going to stay up front, and I don't care if these guys are going to run 435s, 440s for 26 miles. Right. Like I'm just going to do what I can. And I think the more you kind of follow the sport, the more you see that that the best way to have success, both in a race and on the like top 10 lists and on your PR, when you look at your PRs, it's from competing. And it's also, I think, the most gratifying sort of approach to take is to focus on competing and doing what you can do, as opposed to constantly being worried about your PR, being worried about seconds on the clock, being worried about where you stack up, on a leaderboard. So
I have two follow-up questions. I'll start with the one that's probably taboo. Do you think that if you put Kipchoge in at the London Marathon this year in a race setting, that he could have broken two in the race setting and the ability to compete with people around him versus just competing with himself? I say that sort of half as a joke, but
I mean it's tough because I think he would run faster if he had someone to compete with. I think that's clearly the answer. It just, he's at a place where there aren't a ton of people to compete with for a number of reasons. It's hard to get, he's one of the two fastest marathoners of all time. Him and Bekele are basically right there and 2 seconds apart, if in terms of record legal races. So, I don't know. I mean, whether or not he can run 159 on a record legal course in a record legal situation, I have no idea. So, yeah.
So the other piece that you were mentioning is you talk about execution and the results and the times will come. I wasn't in a place where I believed that until it actually happened. And it was a fascinating experience to be standing on the start line, so disassociated with the time on the clock, but the time on the clock was part of the goal. So I spent 4 years trying to break 3 in the marathon. And in that process, I didn't even break 4 in one of those races. And it took getting onto that start line, feeling confident and feeling like I've done everything possible in the buildup. And I think I even, tagged you in a couple of the workouts that like put in the work, that put in those bricks that were required to get there. And it was such a freeing feeling. And I didn't care if it was a 2, 3, or a 4 that showed up on the finishing clock, and fortunately ended up being a 2. But my question from that is, what is your advice to other runners, specifically probably amateurs, that are really caught up on the times? And I know I was in a place where the times were everything, and it wasn't. I got to probably a pretty unhealthy place with that. So I want to know, what would your advice be for somebody who's maybe in that place where they're so hyper focused on PRing or breaking 3 or breaking 4, breaking 5, whatever it might be?
I guess I would say that probably the advice that I would give somebody is like, it's really not that important, at the end of the day. Even for me, what the time on the clock says or what the place on the results say, like the most important things to me are, the people in my life, and the relationships I have. And I remember we were doing like a Q&A at a running store, and someone asked a very similar question, and he was there with his, I don't know, wife or lady friend. And I like kind of redirected the question to her, and I said, "Are you still going to love this guy if he doesn't PR?" And she was like, "Yes, of course." And I was like, "Okay, well, in that case, then you just go out there, man, like try your hardest, have fun, and whatever no matter what happens, the most important thing in your life is still going to be there, or like a very important thing in your life is still going to be there. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And if you train as hard as you can and you prepare as well as you can and then try as hard as you can in the race, like you can't really like be mad at that. The result has to be whatever it is. And you just need to be at peace with that. And at least in that moment. And that's not to say that you can't take another crack at it or try to push the limits or whatever. But on a day, like if you did everything you could, that's what you could do.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that that's a piece that we all need to hear more often. And especially coming from someone whose job it is to perform. Even someone like Scott is saying that it's, just go out and execute. And if you do well, great. If you don't, it's not the last race.
Yeah.
Hopefully. So that leads us into where we're at today. Maybe what's your perspective, or where's your head at with the uncertainty that we have around us?
That's a good question. Like, I'm not an epidemiologist, so I'm not going to sit here and try to predict whether or not Boston will happen or Chicago or New York. Like, that's way above my pay grade. But for us at the moment, we're just kind of looking at ways to still compete, and whether that's chasing a Strava segment that we've laid out, or whether that's just running a time trial or whatever it is. Like, opportunities to compete and opportunities to test yourself don't have to be between a start and a finish line. You can just go out on a road and let it rip. Even if it's a completely arbitrary distance, like some of the most fun races I've ever done, even like the races that have been like official races when distance was not a factor or time was not a factor, those are some of the best ones. Cross country, times don't mean anything. I love cross country. Manchester road race, like that race is like 4.744 miles. That's not a distance. Nobody knows what that means.
Right.
It was one of the coolest races I've ever done. We're talking on the Boulder, is coming up, and like that race is a 10K that's run in the middle of the day at altitude on a really hilly course with a lot of turns. Like, time does not matter. It doesn't matter. Right. The only thing that matters is trying as hard as you can and like really trying to rip. And so that's really what makes it the most fun, is when the clock isn't a factor, when it's not the typical like get on a track and time trial situation. So yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a permission to like have some more fun with it too. I had my coach on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he said one of the things that I'm stressing to all of the athletes is like you can stop your run and like smell the roses and take a photo from the top of the mountain and P.S. you can do this at any time, anyways.
Yeah,
Was what he was saying. It's like it just doesn't matter. But it was, it's funny you mention, mention it that way. It's like, this is the time to reconnect with why you run. And there's been a fascinating dialogue that's been going on Twitter and through some other podcasts where people are really starting to reevaluate, like what is their motivation for getting out and doing it. And, your neighbor in Flagstaff, Sarah Hall, was tweeting about how this is a great time for people who are intrinsically motivated to potentially shine and develop and improve, which is super cool. So again, Boulder. It's this weekend. I was supposed to be flying out there right about now, actually. So we'll both be sadly missing that one, but it's super cool what they're doing with the community aspect of a virtual race and then potentially a race in September. So why'd you choose that one? There are, a handful of virtual races out there. So I guess I'm curious, why Boulder?
Well, I mean, I grew up 30 minutes south of Boulder. Grew up racing the Boulder, bunch of years. So that hometown feel is really special to me. It was really special to race it 3 times as a pro. So it's, it's kind of a no-brainer to want to be associated with it in some way. And I don't know if Ben has a 10K tempo or whatever on the schedule, but I'll figure out a way to get 6.2 miles in and log it, even if it's slow. So
cool. Do you think the team will be participating in other virtual races? What's the sort of the take on staying connected to the racing community?
Yeah, we're going to do some stuff, hopefully, that is a little bit unorthodox for us. There's a couple Strava records in town that are pretty prestigious. There's like 2 mountains, or one mountain sort of climb that would be really cool to get, and we're going to probably try to go after that. And then there's like the A1 loop, which is a kind of epic long run spot that has sort of gotten notoriety. It's like 21 miles and pretty popular place to do a long run. It's pretty hard, and the Strava record's like very impressive at this point. So we might take a shot at that as well. So yeah, we're looking for opportunities to compete, and whether that's looking for a Strava race, whether that's setting something up in Flagstaff or going out to Southern California and doing something like informal, so be it. And hopefully this summer we'll be able to actually run like a formal race in some way. So I don't know what the distance is. I don't know whether that'll be on a track or on a road or whatever, but I'm optimistic that we'll get to have some sort of actual racing opportunity. But yeah, other than that, we're going after Strava records. We're doing time trials. We're just having fun, and we're just trying to compete.
Cool. You think it's important for amateur runners to do virtual races?
If they're into it, I think the important thing right now is to have fun and is to enjoy running. And if really pushing yourself in a 10K time trial is fun for you, if that's something that excites you, gets you out of bed, and kind of lights a fire in you, then absolutely go for it, rip it, have fun.
Yeah.
But if you get up and you're like, I don't know, this isn't for me. I'd kind of rather go run some trails. Go for that. Go do that. I'm not going to sit here, and I know this is supposed to be promotion for Boulder, and that's great. I love the Boulder, but like, I'm not going to tell you to do something you don't want to do.
No, I think it's good. I was chatting with a friend the other day, and she was like, what's the point of a virtual race? Like, I don't get it. And she asked me if I was motivated to do any, and I hadn't been until this past week. And I think it's like the lack of like feeling connected or feeling like there are other people there with you that was why I didn't want to do it. Like I couldn't picture, signing up for just a virtual race and walking out my front door and doing it. And that being said, like I love time trialing, and it's basically the same thing, but the perception or the way that it's presented, I think is super important. So when there was one in Boston, the Harpoon 5 miler, and the way that they presented it was like, you're gonna go for a race, then you're gonna drink your Harpoon, and then like tune into our into our Instagram live, and we'll show people partying afterwards. Like maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but I kind of like it. So I think for races that like need the registration to sustain themselves, I think like they're gonna have to get creative and figure out a way for runners to enjoy it. But I think it gets back to being, having fun. That's the most important part.
Yeah, which should be the point of like actual races. Formal racing should be fun as well. Like,
right.
Yeah.
So have you gotten to a point in running where it wasn't fun for you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think everyone at some point has a love-hate relationship with running. For me, it was those times coincided with when I wasn't taking it that seriously, or as seriously as I should have. So, in college, especially my freshman year, I really leaned into kind of my newfound freedom and, lack of curfew and access to parties and stuff like that. And, I mean, look, running's not that fun when you're trying to train really hard and you're not sleeping enough and you're not eating right and you're not,
right.
Like I was staying up till 2 a.m. 3 nights a week. I was drinking too much. I wasn't taking care of my body. And so at some point, running's going to go downhill. Physically, you just don't have enough energy to do that. And so, yeah, running wasn't fun when I was burnt out and fried and, overtraining, which is not to say like the workouts I was supposed to be doing were very manageable, but I was
at the time it was too hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Because of my choices. So of course there's been times when I've been like, this is stupid. Why am I even doing this? But really what that ended up being was like, it was like a cop out, because what I should have been saying that about was the partying and the drinking and the chasing girls till 2 a.m. Like that was what I was stupid. That's what I shouldn't have been doing. No matter how much fun I might've been having, like, what has always been more fulfilling to me is the running and the dedicating myself to a task and trying to be the best that I can be. That's way cooler and way more interesting to me. So, yeah, that's a long way, I guess, of saying like sometimes running sucks.
Definitely. So what's the environment like with your team today?
So do you mean like how does practice and how does our team sort of look on a weekly basis?
Yeah. Compared to knowing that, you guys do a lot of workouts together and whatnot, how have you guys sort of kept that connection? Okay.
Yeah. So when the pandemic hit and the shelter in place order took effect, we were completely on our own. If you lived with somebody else on the team, you could train with them, but that was it. Mm-hmm. Since then, those orders have been like a little bit relaxed. So we're still meeting in small groups, the men and the women. So currently we have 4 men in Flagstaff training. So the men meet up and then the women meet up in a different place. The men work out together, the women work out together. So we're still keeping pretty small, which is in accordance with, Arizona rules. And then from like a social aspect, we do a Zoom call every Thursday, which is, it's supposed to be like a sports psychology kind of meeting where we do some like guided focusing practice. And then afterwards, we'll usually hang out and chat for 20, 30 minutes afterwards. We've had a few team meetings that were just nothing on the agenda. It was just social. So there is still like a team aspect to our week and to our days. It's not, we're by no means doing full practice. Like we're not going to the gym together. We're trying to be responsible in this. And we understand that in a lot of ways we're role models. So we're not trying to we're trying to follow the best advice possible.
Cool. One of the things that it looks like you've been doing to stay engaged and active is your own podcast. How did that come about, and what's that experience like?
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't done enough. Sorry, Chavez. I'll get back on it. I just like doing them in person, so it's been tough to do them. Get excited to do one over Zoom. Or over Zencaster as we're using.
I feel the same way. It's like I did my first 65 episodes face to face, and it's not the same. Like I can't see your face right now, so I don't know when you're excited about something. I don't know when you're bored with the question, and I don't know, like, it's hard as a podcaster to know like where to press. And so I have even more appreciation for anyone who normally only does it over the phone or whatnot. But yeah, I feel you on that. It's hard.
Yeah, I think the podcasts that I like the most, they're not interviews, or at least they don't feel like interviews. They feel like conversations. Right. There's give and take. There's reactions. They're not scripted, really. And that's just, it's much harder to get that feel over Zoom. And I didn't really want it to feel like an interview about somebody else's favorite movie. Like that wasn't the point. I wanted to engage with the movie as well. Like the point was to just watch movies and have fun conversations about them. So yeah.
I listened to the Top Gun review today. And by the way, Top Gun is the best movie out there. So that one was fun.
It's certainly up there in terms of rewatchability. I mean, it's next level.
Yeah, and the soundtrack just never gets old.
Absolutely. It's really a classic soundtrack. Just very, very 80s.
Yeah, I didn't know that one of those songs was actually created for the movie.
Kenny Loggins, man.
Yes. Awesome. Where did that come from? How did you decide that you wanted to do that?
It really came from having conversations on runs about movies, where it was like, we go on runs as a group 6 times a week. And it turns out, like, when you get kind of on a topic, especially a movie, and you're talking about what you liked, what you didn't like, that goes by really fast. It's really, really fun. It's enjoyable. So I thought it would be a fun format for a podcast, is kind of just an informal conversation about movies with runners who I think are interesting or cool, or who are stopping through Flagstaff, or who I have some sort of friendly relationship with from before the podcast. I thought it would be fun to just sit down and have a conversation about movies together.
Cool. And so you said Chris Chavez is doing all the editing and all the not fun stuff?
Pretty much, yeah. I said I don't really want to do that, but I'll do this podcast for Sidious. And I need to get back on it. I think we're going to do, Ben Rosario and I think are going to do Jojo Rabbit this week. And then I think myself and Jason Suarez, I'm saying this mostly so that I have a record of me doing it. I have to follow through. I think we're going to break down some of the Fast and the Furious movies.
Cool. Well, this podcast is airing tomorrow, so it'll be out there that you said that pretty quickly.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. I'm on it.
By the weekend, you're going to need to have four new episodes.
Yeah.
So what's it like training with Ben?
It's great. He's a good coach, and I think we have a really good relationship. So, I enjoy it. I've been here 5 years, so I think we have a good thing going.
Cool. Talking about the book, you guys co-wrote a book on training for the New York City Marathon. It's a pretty in-depth and candid view into who you are. Did that feel, was there any sort of second guessing the fact that you were doing that and sort of telling all?
No, I mean, it was, in a lot of ways, it was like the idea was distilled from kind of our ethos already.
The normal approach, yeah.
Yeah, like we've never like kept workouts close to the vest or anything like that. So the idea, that part felt pretty natural. I think the part that was a little bit harder was, like, I knew that the book was going to be the best it could be if I was very open and personal and transparent about stuff. And it felt more like a journal as opposed to sort of like a polished training log, or like a hype piece, you know? So I think the hardest part was like sharing, at one point I share how I felt like I was about to have an anxiety attack in a workout. I talk about like doubts and fears I had in my own fitness, and those are the hardest parts to write, but I knew that they were going to be, without those, the book,
the realist,
be good. Yeah. Because no one wants to read like 17 chapters, 150 pages of like, this is going really well. You need,
right.
Nor is that
Scott's
reality.
Perfect build-up. Yeah.
Yeah. Nor is that reality by any means. So, kind of opening myself up to like sharing stuff that maybe wouldn't paint myself in the best light, I guess, is more interesting to me.
And I find that part fascinating in particular. I think that that's what separates your group from many others where, you're all running fast times, but you're also showing the human side. And I think it's very intentional, and I think it's needed in the sport. But has that always been, I don't want to say second nature, but has that always been something that you've done, or has that evolved? You mentioned that, it wasn't super comfortable at first. So what was that process like?
Yeah, I guess I don't think I would have ever done it had I not been on an AZ Elite to begin with. Just part of the ethos of the team and part of our responsibilities as a member of the team is to share every part of the journey and document kind of like document our lives in a way that, that is interesting to people. We need to cultivate fans. And that's sort of a professional obligation, but it's also, the hardest part is like starting out doing it the first time, because you're worried that people will like not accept it or whatever, or not look at you favorably. But realistically, like, running fans are pretty tame. Like I don't know that I've ever like shared something about disappointment or shared something I felt uncomfortable sharing, and then also got like negative feedback from it. It's way, harder to be like a professional basketball player, football player, baseball player, where the spotlight is really, really big. So I think it's, the running fans are great. They're very supportive.
Thank you again to the BOLDERBoulder for supporting this episode. If you've tuned into the podcast in the past, you may have heard me talking about this race and how amazing it is. I've run BOLDERBoulder the past 2 years, and I'm definitely going to miss it this Memorial Day. It's one of my favorite races. Fortunately, they're offering a free and virtual edition with proceeds from their limited edition gear going to support Colorado's COVID-19 relief fund. Register today at BOLDERBoulder.com. And now back to my chat with Scott. One of the other things you mentioned was having an anxiety attack in a workout. Is mental health, or how is mental health something that you focus on?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something you think about really until it is something that you really have to work on. I feel like, at least that was kind of my experience. Up until college, I had never had to deal with any sort of like mental hygiene or mental health training or anything like that. And then all of a sudden, like I was having, I had like a documented anxiety disorder. And I had like 3 nights in a row where I was just irrationally obsessing about this stupid bank account that I'd closed and like how it was definitely still open, like even after I'd checked. And so since then, I've noticed that like just I have irrational anxiety in general about things that I don't warrant me being anxious over. So yeah, I think it's important to me to be at least in control of, or not in control of, but be able to deal with kind of the things that I go through in a healthy way, as opposed to, you know, staying up for 3 nights in a row. Like now I have strategies to kind of nip that in the bud, which I didn't have in college when I was just kind of like at this sort of anxiety disorder's whim. So yeah, I guess that's another rambling answer, but mental health is very important to me, Jonathan.
Awesome. How did you get there to have these strategies in place?
I mean, the first thing I did,
you work with a therapist?
Yeah, the first thing I did was go see a mental health professional. And then he gave me some exercises to do, and I did them, especially when I was feeling anxious. And at the start, what I would journal them. I would carry around this like little journal, and I would write like in a very factual way, like what I was doing and what the anxiety felt like, in like basically as plain of language as I could. So it'd be like standing in line at grocery store, inside of chest feels itchy, uncomfortable, 6 out of 10 severity or something like that, like in a really straightforward kind of way. And then I would write like the thing I did to try to make it better, which was generally like a mindfulness based technique, like grounding, where you focus on your feet touching the ground, or you take like 7 breaths where you focus on the air coming in and out of your nose, or other techniques like that. And then not long after that, I sort of started a more formal mindfulness based practice where I meditate every day, or at least I try to. Yeah, that's kind of what it looked like.
Cool. I appreciate your candor and openness with the mental health piece. It's something that I think is important, particularly for men to talk about, so that it's not taboo. I guess that's how you say that. Because I think that everyone's dealing with shit, and people think that everyone's, not dealing with shit. And to be able to hear more people and more men talk about the fact that, yes, they're struggling. Yes, you can do something about it, and you can manage these things. I think it's that we're all in this together, but like we all have things that we need to work on, and I think that there's power in that type of unity.
Yeah, and to your point, like, I mean, I was a psychology major in college, so it's like I knew the stats that I think it's like 78% of people at some point in their life meet the criteria for at least one diagnosable mental disorder. And it was still hard for me. Like I still didn't really want to go to the mental health center because I thought there was some stigma around it. I mean, there is some stigma around it. I felt like it was a display of weakness or something. Even though 3/4 of the people, like more people than not, will experience something similar or in the similar vein. So yeah, I mean, I think going to see a therapist and opening up that line of communication was probably the best thing I could have done, especially compared to not going to see a therapist and just trying to figure it out on my own, and like how just dealing with like one problem after another. Like how many times can you go to a bank and check to see if you have an account open? Like how many times can you like really struggle to get to sleep at night before you kind of need to? And for me, that answer was like go to the bank twice and not sleep for 3 nights. That was the answer for me, apparently.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. The 78% thing is fascinating. I saw a therapist when I was a kid for like pretty bad depression as a 8-year-old. And what could an 8-year-old be depressed about? I don't know, but I was. And so I saw a psychologist up until high school, and then I was in a much better place. And for whatever reason, a couple of years ago, I had a few people tell me, this might be worth picking up again. And so I did. And I shared that I was seeing a therapist on an Instagram post. And I had like literally 75 people reply to a story saying, I see a therapist too, or thanks for this. I just started seeing a therapist too. And it's like, I don't have like tens of thousands of people viewing my stories. And the fact that many people responded, how many did that apply to that didn't respond? And like literally the first 10 people I told that I was seeing a therapist, all 10 of them said that they were seeing a therapist too. So I think your point about like the stigma is a huge one, and there is a stigma, but behind the stigma, it seems like everybody's doing it or at least is impacted by it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to talk to people who have to like know that there's a stigma, and also talk to people who either are in therapy or have been to therapy. And pretty much everyone is like, yeah, like I love it. Like my therapist is really
yeah.
important to me. This is such a valuable use of my time and money.
Right. Yeah.
And yet it's still hard to go sometimes, it's still tough.
Yeah. I mean, the first step is the hardest. I was talking with Grayson Murphy about it the other day, and she was doing a Q&A on her Instagram. And so one of the things that she said was just take any action, small or large, to put the wheels in motion to get started. And I think that's hard, and it shows strength that you can do it. But yeah, I totally agree. Like I'm now doing it on a weekly basis, and that hour or that 45 minutes is like the best use of my time. And it's always fascinating because sometimes I go into it like, I don't know what we're going to talk about this week. Yeah. But then he just like, he asks a question, and then you talk about something that happened 10 years ago, and you talk about it for 20 minutes, and that it starts to explain like what's going on today. And it's just fascinating how it works.
Yeah. And, I guess to the stigma as well, like it's kind of interesting to me that there is a stigma, because no one would ever look down on you for going to see a doctor if your ankle was messed up. You know? Like, yeah, I have a shitty ankle. Like I went to see a doctor, and then he gave me exercises and helped me to find relief in my ankle pain. Like that would be such a normal conversation to have, whether that's, two guys having that conversation, a guy or a girl, whatever, and for whatever reason, I guess it's maybe like people think that sort of your mental health is more related to your intrinsic value as a human being. I don't know what the answer is, but maybe they see that as differently than like ankle or hamstring or knee pain. But the way I see it is, it's a doctor. A doctor is a doctor, and if it's going to help you have a better relief or have a better life or a better day, go see him. Doesn't matter if it's a mental therapist or a physical therapist.
Definitely. Is gratitude something that you practice as well as part of the meditation?
I wouldn't say I practice it in like a formal way. Most of the meditations I do are like literally just sitting still and focusing on your breath for 10 to 15 minutes. But I think it certainly does, like that practice certainly does lead to me experiencing more gratitude in my life, and being clear-eyed about the fact that I have a pretty sweet life. Like, I don't mean to come on here and brag about how cool my life is, but like
I get to run and eat burritos all the time.
Yeah. But no, I think has, I guess, helped me see like the really good parts of my life, as opposed to focusing
on the bad.
Maybe things that I am not as fond of.
Cool. A couple of questions that people wrote in. What is one thing that you learned from the trials, or one thing that you would do differently?
Mm. One thing I would do differently from the trials. Well, I would run better, I guess. So, you know, I think here's what I'll say. I think after Boston, I ran 209, and I thought of myself as uh, being like a 209 guy, I guess, inherently. Um, and it has taken a little while, and I don't even necessarily know if I'm all the way back there to kind of have reestablished sort of the edge and the underdog mentality I felt that led to the 209. But it's really easy, when you have run really well, to kind of read your own press clippings and see all these sort of predictions of like, you're going to make the team, like these are my top three, Scott's in it, and just sort of believe that I have some sort of claim to being better than people who I've beaten previously, which is obviously not the case. Like each race is its own thing. So yeah, I guess I don't necessarily know if that's one thing that I could have done differently, or one thing I've learned, but I guess
Maybe it's humility. Like you still have to
sure.
you still have to execute.
That's probably a more concise way of answering that question. Yeah, I've learned humility.
It was fun. I was watching that race with the Goo crew, and Yuri was jumping up and down and screaming his head off. So it was fun on the other side to see how it went down.
Yeah, great guy, Yuri. And I should say, like, I feel very happy to be excited with, or to be paired with the brands that I have partnered with. Like all three of them, Polar, the Global, Goo, Hoka, they all had such a huge presence, and they treated me so well that weekend, made sure anything I needed, they had it. Like those guys delivered bottles to my room like 2 days before the race so that I could have brand new Goo bottles. Polar brought down like a special watch for me and some of the other athletes to wear. Like Hoka had these brand new, flats that will be coming to the market soon. Like, that was a really cool weekend. And I think all three of those companies really treated me really well. And I'm excited to be partnered with them.
What's it like being being involved in the innovation side, and being, having an ear to the people who are actually creating products?
It's certainly enlightening. I think when you only see the output, sometimes you get frustrated. Like, why doesn't everything go faster? Why can't we just have better shoes right now? Like, whatever. But once you kind of have you realize that these people, like the Hoka innovation crew, these are really smart people who are thinking about every single detail and putting a lot of money into creating these awesome shoes. And the output now, the product that they have is the Carbon Rocket X, the one that all 6 of us on the NAZ Elite team wore at the trials. And it's awesome. It's a great flat. I can't wait for other people to try it. And being a part of sort of having feedback in the production of that was awesome. It was great to feel so included in the Hoka One One brand. Cool.
Speaking of production of a product, other than a tortilla, what is your one must-have burrito ingredient?
I guess cheese. I think I would say cheese is probably the tortilla gets a lot of notoriety because it's on the outside. It's the outward facing aspect of the burrito, but I think cheese is really the glue guy, if you will. Maybe it's like kind of the Rodman to the 96 Bulls, if that was a burrito. Just because it really helps. It really, something maybe you don't think about all the time, but accentuates all the other aspects of the burrito.
What's your ideal burrito?
I would say, I'm going to get real specific with you, Jonathan. I really am.
Let's do it.
It is a Super Azteca burrito from Burrito Azteca on Rosa Parks in North Portland. That was, that's what we used to get probably 2 times a week every time we would go to Burrito Azteca in college. Yeah, actually, when I was going to college, that was not on the menu, the Super Azteca burrito, because the Super Azteca it's a chili relleno burrito with meat in it. And back then you could just get the chili relleno or you could get the Azteca burrito, until myself and a few friends asked, can I just get the Azteca burrito with chicken and a chili relleno? Can you just put it in there? And I very distinctly remember on the first time I did it, the guy said, I don't know how much to charge you for that. And I said, whatever you think is fair, man. And yeah, and now I guess that's been 5 years later, it's on the menu, and I really feel responsible for that.
Are you getting royalties? You should be.
No, I don't think I deserve it. This place was so special. I can't be taking money out of their pockets. I don't deserve it. This place was a haven before I started going there. It'll be a haven well after I've died.
So I have a similar story. Growing up, I grew up just outside of Boston in a town called Needham. And Needham is next to Brookline, home of Honest Taqueria, the greatest burrito place in Boston, in my opinion. Not in my opinion, this is a fact. And every time we had the long lunch in high school, we would go, and it was like a 26-minute drive in each direction, and we had like 70 minutes or something for lunch. So it's sort of like threading the needle on both sides, but we would get a double super burrito. We would get 2 super burritos and put them down like twice a week, and it was the best. And it wasn't on the menu, and now it is. And now apparently they even have something larger than that. I can't imagine eating like 24 or 30 ounces or 30 inches of a burrito, but I guess that's what you need sometimes.
Yeah, that sounds like maybe you might be flying too close to the sun there, brother, but I support anyone's burrito consumption, no matter how long.
Speaking of flying, if you had to choose any actor to play you in a film, why would it be Tom Cruise? No, I'm kidding. Who would it be and why?
I mean, I think selfishly it would be Ryan Gosling, because he's just so handsome. He's just so handsome. And yeah, I mean, that's it. That's the whole reason. He's very handsome.
Okay. There you go. What is one film that everyone loves that you can't stand?
Oh, what am I alone on? All right. People are going to really hate this. I didn't like The Usual Suspects very much. I just didn't. Okay. I didn't care for it. And look, this movie came out in like 1988, so spoiler.
The haters probably.
I'm going to say spoilers. If you don't, turn it off. It's 52 minutes. Turn off the thing. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. It won, a couple awards. But here's what I didn't like about it. Every time in a heist movie, right? Or like a sort of like a thriller or a caper, the bad guy, the main character, if he's so smart, he's got everything planned out, then every time he's interacting with police, he is in control. It's his choice to be there. And frankly, Kevin Spacey, he got lucky a number of times in that movie. They very easily, that fax could have come in 15 minutes earlier and he would have been in handcuffs. There were many times they could have found out that Verbal and Kaiser Sose were the same person. He was leaving a lot up to chance for a criminal mastermind, and I just didn't buy it. I didn't care for it at all. I like movies like, let's say, Ocean's 11, where every time that Danny Ocean and Rusty come up against someone who's trying to foil their plan, it's really on Danny Ocean and Rusty's terms that they're talking. Even the same with Seven. If we want to take another Kevin Spacey example, like his plan involved going to the police. The police might have thought they were in charge. They might have thought they were in control, but they were along for the ride. There was nothing they could do to stop this mastermind, which is not the case in The Usual Suspects. He could have been caught 6 or 7 ways from Sunday. So that's my island. I know I'm alone. I know I'm alone on the Usual Suspects isn't that good corner, but I'm sticking to it.
So if you want to hear some more of this rich movie content, check out Scott's podcast because you'll get that for the whole episode. What do you wish people knew about you?
I don't know. I think I do a pretty good job of sharing the things that I want people to know about me. And I guess not sharing the things I don't necessarily need people to know about me. Is that the first time anyone has said nothing?
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes you get like an oddball, like I play the flute or I play like some obscure instrument or I have 9 toes or nobody said that, but that'd be a good one. Another one, and this might be the hardest question of them all. So saved it for the end.
Yeah.
What are you scared of?
What am I scared of? Let's see. Well, on a really surface level, the movie The Quiet Place scared the shit out of me. But I think on a like a more existential level, like I do get scared that I won't be able to be the best version of myself, I guess. I won't maximize my talent, and in doing so, like I guess I get scared that I will let the people around me down.
So I'd refer you back to the comment you made to the marathoner's girlfriend or wife or lover or whatever, and say, would the people around you still care?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like by like scared that I won't be my best self, I don't necessarily mean like running. Maybe like I'm scared that I would fuck up in some personal way outside of running. I guess that's sort of would be, I guess, more of my fear. But on the running side, also like I say these things and I try to make myself believe them. But hey, I'm human too. I'm not enlightened by any means.
Definitely. Well, cool. Thanks so much for chatting today. Where can we find you if we want to follow along with your burrito adventures, your running adventures, or find your podcast?
Yes, the podcast is Showrunners Podcast. You can search for it wherever you get your pods. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Just search Scott Fauble. I'll come up. And you can follow NAZ Elite for even more behind the scenes Scott Fauble content. So that's what I got.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Of course. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run. And in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.